Reality is made possible by Republic Bank, Hubbard's, Classic Lighting, and Budget Marine Grenada. Good evening and welcome to episode 11 of our Climate Reality. It's a pleasure to be back with you, and this evening we are discussing another very important subject area: climate change and tourism. Of course, we do know that climate change can seriously impact tourism, and we also know that tourism does play a part with climate change. We have two very special guests with us this evening, Ms. Renata Fielding from True Blue Bay Resort and Dr. Jimmy Fletcher. Before we get into our discussion this evening, I will ask them to take a minute just to introduce themselves so you get to know a little bit about them and who you're interacting with this evening. We welcome our viewers on GBN Television, our viewers on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and our listeners on K105 FM. Now, according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, the tourism sector is highly vulnerable to climate change and at the same time contributes to the emission of greenhouse gases which cause global warming. Accelerating climate action in tourism is therefore of utmost importance for the resilience of the sector. Climate action is understood as the efforts to measure and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and strengthen adaptive capacity to climate-induced impacts. Small island developing states face numerous challenges. For a significant number, the remoteness affects their ability to be part of the global supply chain. Many are increasingly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, from devastating storms to the threat of sea level rise. Therefore, the need to scale up climate action in tourism remains urgent, as emissions could rapidly rebound once operations restart, and ultimately, the cost of inaction with regards to climate will be in the long run larger than the cost of any other crisis. We'll be back in just a moment. Do stay with us.
You're watching our Climate Reality on GBN Television, brought to you in part by Republic Bank Limited, Hubbard's, and Classic Lighting.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think of Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize.
Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We going green to be healthy. Going green for security. Going green for prosperity. Going green with Solar Vision. Going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Montrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan. But residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
From the farm to the store to your home. Supporting farmers, catering for your needs. The Food Fair Supermarket provides fresh fruits and vegetables from its 2 convenient locations for over 5 decades. The Food Fair Supermarkets, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our climate reality, and this evening we are looking at climate change and tourism. Of course, this evening we hope to share with you how tourism, or how the tourist sector contributes to climate change, and of course also how climate change can impact tourism, of course, and what's happening here in Grenada as it relates to that, how our tourist sector is impacted by climate change. So before we get into the discussion, I'd ask our guests to take a minute just to share with us a little bit about themselves, and we'll start with Dr. Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher, good evening. Welcome to the program, and please take a minute to tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is James Fletcher, although most of my friends know me as Jimmy. I am a former Minister for Sustainable Development, Energy, Science and Technology in St. Lucia. I was involved in the climate change negotiations, particularly those that led to the signing of the Paris Agreement, the adoption of the Paris Agreement, and the subsequent signing of the Paris Agreement. Since leaving government, I've been working with my own company called Solaricon, which does consulting in climate change, small island developing states issues, water policy development, environmental issues, public policy, a wide range of things related to small island developing states, and how do we ensure their sustainability and their resilience. I think that is me in a nutshell.
Renata, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Fielden. I'm the marketing manager at True Blue Bay Resort. That is a family-run resort by my family. We've had the hotel for 25 years, this year actually, and we've always strived to make this an environmentally friendly hotel, a sustainable hotel, just to give back to the island, not to take too much from the island, just so that we can show the country how a property or a business can function in this way. A bit more about me, I studied environmental policy and regulation in London, so it is also my passion to be sustainable, to drive that forward for Grenada. I do some work with some youth groups around environmental sustainability. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell, and I hope to share with you guys today some stuff that we do around the resort.
Thank you very much. So it's time to get into a discussion this evening. And Dr. Fletcher, I want to start with you. Before we get to our region, the small islands, let's put into context. We know that tourism contributes to climate change, as well as climate change, on the other hand, can impact and of course impacts tourism. Let's talk about the contribution first. How does tourism or the tourist sector contribute to climate change?
Well, I looked at some figures recently, and according to this group called Sustainable Travel International, the tourism industry is responsible for 8% of the global emissions of carbon dioxide. As you know, carbon dioxide is created when we burn fossil fuels to create energy for electricity or for transportation, and the tourism industry is directly responsible for 8% of that, and that's made up of different sources. So first of all, it's transportation. As you know, the tourism industry it lives on transportation, transporting people from one place, which is where they live, to wherever they're vacationing. And that's air travel, but also when they get to the country where they're vacationing, they also use transportation to get around, on land, taxis and buses and tour buses, but also water taxis and boat charters. So that takes up, I think, 49%, almost 50% of that carbon footprint of the tourism industry. Then there are goods, the goods that are used in the tourism industry. Because so many of them are imported, because we don't manufacture many of these goods in our countries, because they imported, there's a carbon footprint associated with them, transporting them again via sea or air to our country. Then there's the food and beverage sector. The tourism industry is a big user of food and beverage. Again, because so much of the food and beverage that is used in the Caribbean, Grenada, St. Lucia, is imported, although there are some resorts that do use more local products, and I'll come to that a little bit later on in the program as that being one of the good responses that we can have to climate change. But because a lot of those food products are imported, there's refrigeration that has to be associated with these products to ensure that they reach Grenada or St. Lucia or the Caribbean in a condition that is still fit for consumption. They have to be packaged. Again, there's a carbon footprint associated with that. But also they have to be transported via air or via sea, and that adds to the carbon footprint of our food and beverage sector. Then you also have food waste. Because the hotels and the restaurants are producing food they don't know how many people will be dining on any given day, there's a lot of food waste that takes place. And when food is wasted, not only are you basically not getting the benefit of the carbon dioxide that was used in the production of that food, but a lot of that food waste ends up in landfills. And when it decomposes, it produces methane gas, which is many, many times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And there's also lodging, the hotels, the Airbnb, the guest houses where the tourists stay when they come into our countries. These have a carbon footprint of their own. Air conditioning to keep the rooms cool, to do the laundry, the high consumption of electricity for laundry, for lighting of all of these buildings. So there is a very large carbon footprint associated with the tourism industry. And then there's the cruise sector, which our cruise ships, these cruise ships are basically floating cities, and they consume a large amount of energy, and in consuming this large amount of energy, they produce a lot of carbon dioxide from the burning of the fossil fuels, the burning of the heavy oil that they use in the ship to generate the power that will keep these floating cities running. I think the shipping industry accounts for 2.9% of global carbon dioxide emissions, and cruise ships account for a very large percentage of that. So you could see how tourism, being such an intensive industry, how it contributes to the production of carbon dioxide, which in turn causes global warming, which in turn causes climate change.
Right, wonderful. You mentioned, and I'm asking you this for the benefit of some of our listeners who probably are not too familiar with the subject. And of course, with everything, there are different terms that are used. You've used carbon footprint quite a lot in your little presentation. Let's just break it down a little bit for the benefit of our listeners and viewers who probably do not understand what you mean by that.
Okay, your carbon footprint is basically how much carbon is used up, how much carbon dioxide equivalent. There are three major greenhouse gases that we're concerned about where climate change is concerned. One is carbon dioxide, which is the one we know most of us spoken about. It's what is created whenever you burn oil or oil derivatives like gasoline or diesel or any other fuel, heavy fuel to produce electricity. That generates carbon dioxide, and the amount of carbon dioxide it produces goes towards your carbon footprint. How much carbon dioxide you are emitting, how much carbon dioxide you are adding to the atmosphere. Any other activity. So when we speak speak about a carbon footprint, we're basically talking about what contribution is this industry, this person, this sector, this activity making to the emissions of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that's when we talk about a carbon footprint, it's what footprint you leave behind where carbon dioxide is concerned from that activity. It's just a term of art just to speak about the impact that an activity, an individual, a sector is having on the emissions of carbon dioxide, which, as I said, is one of the most important greenhouse gases that causes global warming to take place, because it forms this film around our planet that prevents the heat from escaping. And it's just like a greenhouse. That's why it's called a greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane, they cause a lot of that heat that's generated on our planet to actually be redirected back onto the planet. And just like the cover of a greenhouse, that greenhouse warm, those greenhouse gases keep our planet warmer. So that's why we refer to it as a carbon footprint, how much that activity is contributing to that global emission of carbon dioxide.
Okay, thank you very much. Renata, before we get to your substantive contribution, is there anything you'd like to add or comment on what Dr. Fletcher said?
Maybe as the discussion goes on, then I can address some of those.
Right. So you listened to him intently, and he spoke quite a bit about how tourism can actually contribute to global warming and climate change. You are a hotelier.
Yes.
Have you given any consideration to maybe how your establishment contributes to climate change, and maybe you can share with us, what plans you have in place?
Yeah, absolutely. We have thought about it in every single aspect of the resort, because our goal at True Blue Bay Resort is to eventually become carbon neutral or even carbon negative, meaning we're actually taking carbon out of the atmosphere. That would be the end goal, really. We've thought of it in terms of electricity, water, even the food with the methane that Dr. Fletcher was just speaking about, with our transportation, with our harsh chemicals that we use. We've thought about it in every single way. We've tried to make the resort as circular as possible when it comes to sustainability and climate change. For example, most of our resort is actually fueled by solar. If you look on top of, or if you take an aerial shot of the resort, you will see on the top it's covered with solar panels. In fact, I don't think we have enough roofs. We want more solar panels. We need a little field somewhere that we can then implement some more, because that's the way we want to go. We want to go to completely renewable energy. We've thought about having a windmill or a hydro system to generate electricity. In terms of the methane and the food waste from our kitchen, we actually have a biodigester on property. So all of the kitchen waste, the food waste, even the garden waste, that all biodegrades that would then be thrown into the landfill, right? Or in our gardens, or maybe even burned in a bonfire. Some people might do that. We put them in our biodigester, and then that makes methane, which can be burned, and our methane is actually connected up to a stove, which we then use for cooking for one of our bakeries from one of our kitchens. So we actually have foods that are made using methane gas, and it's a good way to keep methane out of the environment. You have to burn it. You can't just let it sit there. You have to burn it. That's very important. And it's a good way to get rid of the waste. And on top of that, just another benefit to one of these systems is that you get this amazing fertilizer from it, and that fertilizer can then go back into the lands or the gardens. We've had farmers fight for this fertilizer because it's so great and amazing, and it helps your gardens look nice. It helps the plants grow. You can then grow organic plants. We have a little kitchen garden in the back of our house, actually, that we've lent to the hotel to use for the kitchen, so that they can grow things and then actually pick from our garden back into the hotel. And that's another thing we do. We think about buying locally as much as we can and producing locally as well. So we have a list of farmers that we constantly go to. We try to make our menus at the restaurants as locally friendly as possible, so we don't have to be importing all of these large amounts of food, which then also contribute back to carbon emissions. And we can also support the local economy that way. And that's most important. You need to support the economy so that they can then also implement things like this. They have the money and the resources to put back into their businesses and make them more efficient and sustainable. And that is super important. So those are a few things that we do. Those are our major things. Actually, no, I've missed one. We actually use all electric vehicles.
I was about to ask you about that.
We do. I actually drove here in one today, and our electric vehicles are powered with our solar panels. So we're not taking anything from the grid. I drove here with solar power today. So we have a fleet of 4 electric cars. We have 2 Leafs, which are smaller cars, and then 2 buses. And we use these for all of our staff transportation. We use these to do any errand runs we have, to pick up any supplies that we need at the resort, to come to any TV interviews. We use it for everything. So I mean, I would highly recommend doing something like this, because in the long run, it's not only better for the environment and it reduces your carbon emission, but it actually saves you money with gas, because gas is really expensive these days.
It is.
Yeah.
Quickly though, I mean, the whole idea of electric vehicles, I mean, it's fairly new to Grenada.
Yes.
And of course, we are encouraging people to start thinking about, moving in that direction. But there must be some concerns. Can this probably accommodate me for what I want to do if I want to drive around the island? I mean, based on your experience, should there be any concern from people who are thinking about it?
I don't think so. The newer electric vehicles, and even the older ones, ours are 2016 models, which are considered old at this point, can bring us to the top of the island and back. And usually when you're doing these trips, you can also stop at different places. So if you're desperate, they come with chargers. You can plug them in anywhere and charge up. But it's not needed because Grenada is so small. You can get around the island, and they hold about ours hold about 150 miles, which is a large amount. But the newer models, they hold upwards of 300 miles. That you can drive 3 times around Grenada and you'll still be fine. And those newer models also charge up in an hour, half an hour, depending on your power source. So to be honest, I think the best way forward for Grenada is for everyone to start investing in electric vehicles, because one, you can charge them for free with the sun if you have a solar power, but also they're much cheaper to run because they have less parts. You don't have that big engine, so they have less problems. In our time, I think our most serious issue has been the shocks on our car and changing the tires, because some of Grenada's roads aren't great.
Yes, indeed.
So that's been our biggest problem. I think one time the little power source knocked a little bit from the battery, so we just had to push it back, and then that was the problem solved. So it saves you money on repairs, and then it also saves you money on gas, because some of us are paying upward of $200 a week on gas.
Yes.
Whereas we've tested our vehicles. If we pulled it from the grid, it takes about 12 EC dollars for it to fill up from 0 to 150 miles, which is a lot less than you would to fill up a car.
Definitely. One quick question though before we go to Dr. Fletcher. Do you know if, let's say on a national level, I mean, and being a hotelier, do you know if there's any analysis done by Grenada on a whole to look at the contribution that tourism makes to climate change?
As far as I know, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not as far as I know.
All right, wonderful. Dr. Fletcher, I'm sure you're quite excited by, what you heard from Renata and the actions they are taking at the hotel. Any comments you'd like to make as relates to that?
No, except the next time I come to Grenada, I must stay at True. I think that's the only thing I can say about that. True certainly sounds like the ideal ecotourism, sustainable resort. Everything that Renata said that they're doing is what we would encourage every hotel across the Caribbean to do. So, kudos to True Blue and what it's doing. I think that's excellent.
Thank you very much. So at this time, folks, we take a short break. When we come back, we have a lot more to talk about. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize.
Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan. But residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
From the farm to the store to your home. Supporting farmers, catering for your needs. The Food Fair Supermarket provides fresh fruits and vegetables from its 2 convenient locations for over 5 decades. The Food Fair Supermarkets, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We going green to be healthy. Going green for security. Going green for prosperity. Going green with Solar Vision. We going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Monrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our climate reality, and those of you just joining us, we're quite happy to have you. Dr. Fletcher, we're coming back to you, and I want us to now look at the other side of the coin. We've looked at how the tourist sector contributes to climate change. Let's now look at how climate change can impact the sector.
Yeah, that's a big one, and that's an important one. First of all, many of our hotels are located on our beaches because we want to give our guests that experience of walking out of their rooms and within a few steps they're either on the beach or they're close to the water. Now, for small island developing states like ours, that's a serious problem because what is happening with global warming is that our polar ice caps are melting. The North Pole, when you look at the warming that's taking place at the North Pole in the Arctic, and the South Pole in the Antarctic is actually warmer than the average around the globe. So the glaciers are melting at a much higher rate than was originally expected, because these areas are warming faster. As these glaciers melt, sea levels are rising, and they're predicting that we may have anywhere between a 3 and 5 foot increase in sea levels by the end of this century. For small island developing states like ours, that is catastrophic, because when you think about it, almost all of our economic and social infrastructure is located close to the beach. Close to the water, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Jamaica, you name it. And all of our most of our hotel and tourism infrastructure is located within close proximity of our water. So a 3 to 5 foot sea level rise would put in peril most of the infrastructure that is associated with the tourism industry. The hotels, the restaurants, the water sports, everything that the tourism industry depends on will be affected. Almost everything will be affected by sea level rise. Then you have storm surge. One of the things that climate change has been predicted to cause is more intense and stronger hurricanes. With stronger hurricanes will come greater storm surges. Again, you have storm surge battering these hotels, these properties that are on the beach. The damage will be significant, damage to infrastructure, but also what it's doing, the potential loss of human life as a result of those hotels and other infrastructure being in such close proximity to the waters. Then you have the hotter temperatures that are coming with climate change. The Caribbean is a very pleasant place to vacation right now because our temperatures are nice. But when you start talking about an increase of 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees Celsius, which is where we're heading right now, unfortunately, not the 1.5 degree Celsius threshold that we have said at small island developing states we need to cap this at. But from everything that is happening, unless there's a drastic change and the developed countries do what we small island developing states have been saying to them with increasing urgency needs to be done, and that they have to now shift away from using fossil fuels, we'll probably find ourselves at 2.5 degrees Celsius warmer by the end of this century. So you're talking about warmer and hotter days for us in the Caribbean. It means that things will be a little bit less comfortable, but also for a hotel, you have to be spending more money on air conditioning, because the temperatures are warmer. So the days when you probably leave the AC off and just depend on that cool Caribbean breeze to keep things cool, those days will be fewer and further between. So you'll have warmer temperatures, and that holiday experience won't be the same. Then you have stronger hurricanes to deal with. So you're basically talking between the months of June and November, the possibility of having to deal with stronger hurricanes and what that does to the image of the Caribbean as a place that, people know that you will get the occasional hurricane in the Caribbean. But if we have situations like we had, was it back in 2017 when you had Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria passing through the region and causing so much devastation? If this becomes something that happens with increasing frequency, then people start making different choices about where they vacation. Then you also expect greater variability in rainfall. They're talking about anything between a 20 and 25% reduction in rainfall in some parts in the Eastern Caribbean. That's going to put a lot of pressure on hotels, because no hotel will impose a water restriction on its guests and tell them, well, you can only shower once a day, or when you leave the pool, you can't shower, you can't wash your feet off. Hotels are big users of water. So if you have issues of water scarcity that become more frequent, then that causes a problem, but it also makes the hotel plan a lot more expensive to run, because the hotel now has to start trucking in water or installing desalination plants, that if these desalination plants are not run by solar, not powered by solar, but they powered off the grid, then you're now using a lot more electricity, which is expensive, but you're also causing damage to the environment by putting that brine, that salty water, back out into your marine space. Then your oceans are getting warmer. Mm-hmm. They're also getting more acidic. And the reason the oceans are getting more acidic is because they're being forced to absorb more carbon dioxide as we are pumping more carbon dioxide out into the atmosphere by all of these factories and electricity plants that are burning oil, burning diesel, burning gasoline to produce energy, but also producing carbon dioxide. So as more carbon dioxide is produced, the oceans have to absorb more of that carbon dioxide, because the oceans absorb carbon dioxide the same way, that we talk about sinks for carbon dioxide, and we always talk about our trees, our forests as being a sink for carbon dioxide because they take in the carbon dioxide, and that's true. But what many people don't understand is the ocean is also a sink for carbon dioxide, and it absorbs carbon dioxide. As the oceans are forced to absorb more carbon dioxide, they become more acidic. And as they become more acidic, our coral reefs start to die out. And as the oceans become warmer also, our coral reefs start to die out. So these beautiful coral reefs that people come to Grenada, come to St. Lucia to go diving so that they can see all these beautiful marine lands, marine seascapes, and, you know, dive and maybe even see Nemo when you're diving and see all those colorful fish. You won't see them anymore because you're diving and the corals are dead or dying. And the great marine life that you associate with the Caribbean is no longer there. And the final thing, which many people don't recognize, is that climate change also has very serious health impacts. As the temperatures get hotter and the water cycles get more variable, there is a greater chance of vector-borne diseases. And we saw that a few years ago with Zika and chikungunya. You know, possibility of dengue becoming much more frequent. You don't want the Caribbean to now be associated with diseases like that. We saw what Zika and chikungunya did to the tourism industry a few years ago when we had those outbreaks. You don't want that to be something that people hear that, okay, if you come down to the Caribbean, you have to be careful because you could get bitten by a mosquito, and there are diseases that come with this. So climate change can have a very devastating impact on the tourism industry itself, not to mention the people who work in the tourism industry, who are all Grenadians and St. Lucians like you and me, and our lives are being affected, and we can't give of our best in the industry if we're not enjoying the same quality of life that we are used to enjoying. So climate change can be very devastating to our local tourism industry. And there's one final point I want to raise. Because we talk about the carbon footprint, going back to that carbon footprint term of the airline industry, and you know, when people take a plane from the UK to Grenada, or from the US to Grenada, or even better, from Dubai to Grenada, the carbon footprint of that flight, that, you know, that flight is using up so many tons of carbon dioxide, and people are being told, well, don't take these long trips anymore. Vacation closer to home. So there's now a double, we're being victimized in another way, because we are not the cause of climate change, but the tourists, well, the potential tourists in those source places like the US, like the UK, like Canada, are being told to not travel to the Caribbean, because if you travel to the Caribbean, you will be increasing your carbon footprint, that you'll be using up a lot more carbon dioxide. So if you're a Canadian and you live in Ottawa, then maybe go to Newfoundland, or maybe go to Calgary, or if you live in the UK, you live in London, then maybe go to Scotland instead of coming down to the Caribbean. So there's this guilt, this shaming that takes place, that a trip to the Caribbean is too costly where carbon dioxide is concerned. So these are other things that our tourism policymakers need to pay attention to ensure that we are not victimized twice. Victimized by the people who are causing the problem, and also now victimized because tourists are being told not to come down to our countries because that will increase their own carbon footprint.
Right. Wonderful. Very, very interesting. Renata, I want to come to you. You know, and my question to you, two parts, because you're also involved with young people in an organization that do quite a bit of work. But first, your property, the services, and of course the amenities that you offer. How have they been affected by climate change?
Well, first and foremost, and I think the most prevalent one, is the water, or the lack thereof water. We've had to invest in quite large water tanks. I believe our water tanks now hold up to 200,000 gallons. That's just in case we have a drought in Grenada, or as NOASA sometimes does, cuts off the water at night. And we have to make sure that our hotel guests do have water all the time, because those are things that affect their experience and their perception of Grenada and of our resort. I think especially this season we've had a few issues with that in particular. We've also noticed a sea level rise right at the dock. Some of you might know the Dodgy Dock restaurant. It's actually over the water. When the marina next to that dock was built, it was a 2-foot difference from high tide to the dock.
Okay.
Now it's only 1 foot. So we can actually see that. It has risen over high tide in the last 15 years since that was built. The next thing is food security. We're seeing less and less things being available for example, I don't know if we all remember the lettuce fiasco earlier this year,
yes,
where lettuce was $50 in IGA or something ridiculous like that, and no one had lettuce on the island. Or sometimes no one has tomatoes, and that's all to do with the weather patterns. The lettuce couldn't grow because, you know, the rain didn't fall, or the rain did fall, or I'm not a farmer, so I don't know, but yeah, something along those lines. Those are all things that seriously affect the way we operate. And then yes, hurricanes is always something that is on people's list when they ask us about the Caribbean and climate change. Well, the good news for Grenada is that we are lower on the hurricane belt, so that's in favor for us. But you know, there's always still that risk of having a bad hurricane like Ivan come back.
Yes. Yes.
So we've had to invest in stronger buildings, hurricane plans. We have a whole, you know, 2 generators that will power the resort if the power comes out. This also helps with the water supply and the tanks. We've had many investments because we need to prepare for these natural disasters that might happen. So, I mean, the list is endless of things that you can prepare for and need to prepare for the future, because climate change is not just about mitigating, as I was previously talking about, you know, getting rid of your carbon emissions or lowering your carbon emissions. It's about adapting to the future. We need to see what's coming and adapt to the best of our ability that we can to the new changes in our climate and our weather patterns.
Right, lovely. As it relates to your group, and I know you do a lot of work in communities and so, in your moving around and the work that you do, have you noticed any impacts of climate change here in Grenada?
Yes, and as Dr. Fletcher was mentioning, I think one of the biggest ones is the marine life and the reefs around the island. They've quite rapidly deteriorated. There are some good ones still out there, and the bridge to reef kind of process where people are cutting down mangroves or they're irrigating land, and then that goes and runs off into the ocean, and those also, you know, kill off the coral reefs that are really important for our survival, honestly, because they provide us with food and jobs and income, you know, for the fishermen. And we need those sorts of ecosystems around to be able to operate as a country. We've noticed a huge increase in the amount of trash, especially on the east coast of the island. And I don't think it's 100% due to what we are producing ourselves. We've done a number of cleanups on that side and seen bottles from, you know, countries you don't even know the language on. So you're seeing these tides bringing in more and more trash to our shores. Then you have the sargassum seaweed. That's a huge problem, and that has been, every year it seems to be getting worse and worse. And that also makes doing these cleanups harder, because you have to then dig through this sargassum, and the sargassum can be poisonous. I mean, I've had pieces of it pop on my skin, and then, you know, it starts to get red and rash. So those are just a few of the things. I mean, I'm sure if we bring all of the members here, they could list all night for you the things that they've noticed in their communities or in their jobs that's been happening in Grenada.
Dr. Fletcher, Renata just mentioned the sargassum seaweed. You want to comment on that, because you did not speak of it earlier?
Well, I kind of stay away from discussing sargassum as a climate change issue, because I don't know. The oceans are warmer, so there is that point. But there's also the fact that we are pumping in more chemicals into our oceans, phosphorus and nitrogen chemicals from laundry and fertilizers and everything else, which are creating very rich conditions for sargassum and other seaweed and algae to grow. So a friend of mine, actually, who works at the 5 Cs at the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, said something to me once that I love, and he says, climate change is everything, but not everything is climate change. I think that's so profound, because it really says that, yes, climate change impacts everything, but there's so many things that we are doing that are worsening the impacts of climate change, which I think we need to pay attention to, because particularly within our own local jurisdictions, when we litter indiscriminately, when we fell trees and we cause waterways to be clogged, if there are heavy rains, then you will get flooding. And people will be quick to say, well, that flooding is as a result of climate change. But if you look back maybe 15, 20 years ago, you'll find that that same level of rainfall did not cause the flooding that it caused in St. George's or it caused in Castries. The reason that you have all this flooding now is because we've built along many of our slopes. So before, where you had vegetation that could have allowed the rainfall to just drop and percolate down into the soil, what you have now are houses with roofs that are concentrating water and dropping it on concrete surfaces that is causing that water to cascade down into a very small space where you don't have adequate drainage to get it out. So I treat sargassum that way, that I can't say definitively that sargassum is as a result of climate change, but certainly sargassum is one of the things that we've seen in recent times, and I'm certain that as our oceans have become warmer and as the oceans have become richer with all of these chemicals we've been pumping into them, then it makes it so much easier for sargassum, algae, and all other invasive species to flourish.
Right, and also, I mean, if if our beaches are all filled with sargassum, it can affect our tourist sector, because our tourists won't be able to enjoy our beaches and things like that. I recall in the early days we saw sargassum on the eastern coastline. We're hearing now that bits of it are now appearing on the other side of the island, the Caribbean Sea. So that in itself, is a deterrent. So let's just take our final break. When we come back, let's look at what the solutions are, if there are any. We'll be back in a moment.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize.
Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
It's the 4th edition of Hubbard's Live Free for 1 year promotion. Cuatro Punto Cero. It's unbelievably amazing. You can win free fuel, free drinks, cash prizes, free property and vehicular insurance, free cable, TV and internet, free electricity, free coke, free water, free cooking gas, free paint supplies, free passes to Sunshine Promotion events for 2023, free groceries, all for 1 whole year. And every winner receives a lunch package. Be sure to fill out the entry forms and enter it into the marked entry boxes at all Hubbard's departments and at participating outlets. Promotion runs from April 1st to September 30th, 2023. Draws will be held every 2 weeks. Terms and conditions apply.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan. But residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We going green to be healthy, going green for security, going green for prosperity, going green with Solar Vision. We going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Monrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Welcome back, everyone, of course, to the final segment of this evening's program. Dr. Fletcher, I'm coming back to you. Of course, earlier, Renata mentioned a number of things that has been done at her hotel to help minimize, the contribution from their end. On a broader scale, what are some of the solutions? What can be done? What can be done generally to minimize this? And how can our citizens get involved?
Well, first of all, I want to compliment Renata on what True Blue Bay has been doing, because many of the things that they're doing are things that I would recommend to be done. First of all, looking at the energy sector. As many of our hotels as possible should try to move away from using fossil fuels for the generation of electricity and putting in solar panels, solar photovoltaic panels on their roofs. All of these hotels, all of these guest houses have a lot of roof space. Put as many solar panels as you can afford in the first instance, and as your regulator will allow you to. Hopefully the regulator in Grenada is supportive and will allow you to put quite a bit of solar panels on your rooftop so that you could generate a lot of your electricity from solar. Put in energy saving devices. So if you have, your room should not be, the air condition shouldn't be running if there's nobody in there. So put in devices that when people leave the room, when they take that key card out, the air condition automatically goes off. You don't want to have rooms that are not being used, being lit and air conditioned. So ensure that you put these things in place so that you reduce on your energy consumption, so that even if you're using energy from the grid, you are minimizing as much as possible the energy that you use. And it's not just good for the environment, but it's good for your bottom line, because energy costs are very high, particularly now with this Russia-Ukraine war going on and the cost of electricity. Harvest, and also electric vehicles. Again, I'm really happy to hear what True Blue Bay Resort is doing with electric vehicles, and even more so that the electric vehicles are being powered by solar panels. But even if they're being powered off the grid, the electric vehicle is a lot more efficient than your normal internal combustion engine, which is what you and I use. Unfortunately, I still use an ICE internal combustion engine vehicle. I do plan to shift to an electric vehicle very soon, because it just makes so much more sense, and it's so much more affordable. Rainwater harvesting as much as possible, and using that rainwater for all of the non-potable uses. So things like irrigating your lawns, and hotels and guest houses always want to keep their landscape looking pristine. But it really is a crime to be doing that with the water that your water company has captured, has treated, has put chemicals in, and has used electricity to pump to your resort, and then to use that same water to water your lawn, or to use that water to flush your toilets. If you could use rainwater to do these things, then again, it's going to cost you less, but it also reduces, back to that word carbon footprint again, it reduces the carbon footprint of your water use. Another very important thing, although it might sound blasphemous in the tourism sector, but we need to discourage new construction from being on beaches, because it really doesn't make any sense. We know that those places will be inundated as a result of sea level rise or will be threatened as a result of storm surge from stronger hurricanes. Yet we continue to allow new buildings, new hotels, new chains to be built right on the water's edge. And what will happen is that many of these suites that are very expensive suites now will probably become over the water suites in a very short space of time, but not over the water in the way that you would like. And that's something that we need to, as far as our building codes, our land use plans, let's try to discourage more hotels being built in close proximity to the beach, because we really are putting them in harm's way. Again, something that True Blue is doing with the purchasing of food from local suppliers. The more food you could purchase from local suppliers, the better, because it means that, again, carbon footprint, the carbon dioxide that was used in the production of that food is a lot less than if you're importing 40-foot containers from Miami or wherever to feed your guests. The more you could use local food to do that, the better, because you're also helping the local economy to grow. Food waste, to minimize on it as much as possible. Do composting. Composting is great. As Renata said, the farmers are quite excited about it, but you can use it for your own landscaping and use that compost to improve the quality of your landscape. If you have a biodigester, even better, and use the methane from the decaying food, so that the decomposing food, so that you could power an oven or something else. But that is extremely important. Let's put that organic matter back into the soil, as opposed to allowing it to decay and create methane gas. At the policy level, I think this is something I've been trying to get the government of St. Lucia to pay some attention to. Cruise tourism is very important to us. And many of these cruise ships, when they come to our ports, they continue burning their fuel for them to power their operations, so that they can keep all of the guest rooms lit and air conditioned and keep those cruise ships running. The average cruise ship, when it sits in a port, be it in St. George's or in Castries, is going to use up anywhere between 5 and 7 megawatts of electricity. If we can cause these cruise ships to switch off their engines, something that's called coal ironing, and plug into the domestic electricity supply, we can now do many things. First of all, you're reducing on the pollution in the air around St. George's or the air around Castries, because these boats are not not burning fuel and putting particulate matter into the atmosphere. Secondly, they are purchasing electricity from Grenlec in the case of Grenada, or from Lucilec in the case of St. Lucia, which is electricity that would be sold at a higher rate than what they're selling to the normal domestic consumer. Thirdly, if Grenlec or Lucilec is producing a lot of this electricity from renewable sources, then they're helping that company, could be Carnival or Royal Caribbean or Norwegian, reduce on their own carbon footprint and sell themselves as a green cruise operator, because when they import, not only are they not polluting the port, but they're using clean energy. And it also allows the government of Grenada or the government of St. Lucia to sell your port as a green port, which I think is something that would be tremendous as far as the marketing of Grenada is concerned, and especially since you're known as a Spice Isle. So what better way to push this whole Spice Isle concept than to really go full speed with the whole Green Island concept? But I think also the tourism and hospitality sector is a very important, influential and powerful stakeholder in all of our countries. And I would like to see more of our tourism stakeholders putting pressure on our government so that they act with a little bit more urgency on addressing climate issues at the international level and also at the local level. I still find that we talk climate change once a year when the annual climate change conference comes around, and everybody is in a frenzy about climate change and what we're saying. But for the rest of the time, climate change takes a back burner. It goes on the back burner. But climate change is the most critical issue that we have to face. And I would like to see the tourism industry understanding the gravity of this situation where it is concerned, being a more powerful lobby and asking government to please take steps to protect this way of life that is so important for us, but is also what is attracting our visitors from far-flung regions to come to our country to holiday. economy. As far as individuals are concerned, it's pretty much the same thing. Minimize your use of electricity by you putting in solar PV panels on your rooftop if you can afford to, but at the very least, switching off lights when they're not being used, switching off air conditioning units when they're not being used, buying energy efficient appliances, cutting back on food waste, running a kitchen garden, doing composting so that you don't waste your vegetable, whatever excess organic waste you have, you put it back into the soil. Start harvesting your rainwater and using that for flushing your toilets, washing your car, irrigating your garden, things like that. And the good thing about buying an electric vehicle, the good thing about all of these things is that in addition to being good for the environment, they're good for your pocket. If supermarket prices in Grenada are anything like they are in St. Lucia, then the more things that you can grow in your backyard is the better it is for you. Because I tell you, I have a kitchen garden at home, and it really helps me because the price of food in our supermarkets is shocking. And so if you have a kitchen garden and you are contributing to your reducing your carbon footprint, absorbing a little bit of carbon dioxide by those celery plants and parsley plants and sweet peppers that you're growing, but you're also helping your own bottom line because you are saving money. And I think that is important. And finally, working with whatever civil society organizations they are, and that's from an individual perspective, so that you can put pressure on government or within your own civil society space, if there's a network of civil society organizations that you're part of, so that we can lobby the developed countries. Because remember, climate change is not a problem we cause, we're the victims. So we have to lobby these developed countries that have caused the problem and continue to cause the problem to do something about it. It is unconscionable what they're doing to us. And I think we have to say that we have to raise that at every single opportunity. In every forum we get, it could be a tourism forum, a health forum, agriculture forum, every forum we get, we have to raise our voices where this is concerned, because this is the greatest threat to the viability of Caribbean countries.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. The thing is, we're out of time, but for your closing comments, both yourself and Renata, I just want to ask you one question, and you will tie that into your closing comments. Now, one of the dreadful ironies of the climate crisis is that some of the most beautiful and popular places in the world for tourists are most vulnerable. Of course, with temperature rise, extreme weather events, and all of the things that we discussed earlier. And, it's terrible. Can the tourism industry actually survive the climate crisis? Tell me, and you can tie that into your closing comments. Renata, we start with you.
I'd like to end on a positive note. I believe we can, and I think it needs to be a wholesome approach between the private sector and the public sector. We need policies in place from our government that can help the private sector develop into doing all of these things that Dr. Fletcher had just mentioned, and help us to even improve. We need funding. We need more projects happening here. Anytime there's a pilot project in Grenada, we're on that. We need more things to help our economy be a more circular economy, be a greener economy, and then we can market Grenada as a sustainable tourism destination, which we almost already are. It's not a lot of work compared to what many other islands have to do. And so imagine this, right? You take, Dr. Fletcher mentioned long-haul flights earlier. We can then promote, don't worry about your long-haul flight, because Grenada is a carbon negative country, meaning we take carbon out of the atmosphere. Yes. Mm-hmm. You're actually then producing less carbon by coming to visit us than you would be staying home in the UK or in the US. And you can then, sell it that way. And these are all ways that we can just think outside of the box of how we can continue our industry. And I do believe that, we will get there one day with the help of all of the government, the private sector, and all of these projects that all these wonderful people are in Grenada doing right now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Renata. It was a pleasure having you on the program. Dr. Fletcher, your closing words. Can we survive this crisis?
But we have to. We don't have a choice. The tourism industry is critical to the economy, to the society of all of our Caribbean countries. So if the tourism industry is not going to survive the carbon crisis, the climate crisis, we're saying that we as small island developing states in the Caribbean will not survive. And I really would not want to be that fatalistic and pessimistic. It is a tough challenge for us, but I think we have people who are committed. You have people in Grenada. Grenada has always been one of those islands that I've really admired for the work that is done in climate change. You have some very powerful people in Grenada, as we have across the region, who continuously punch well above their weight in climate change negotiations, and they've been able to help us as a community of small island states make those gains that we've had in these climate change negotiations. But there's a lot more that we have to do. We can't give up the fight. You know, we are the last generation that will be able to stop this climate crisis from becoming this irreversible catastrophe that it can be for us. So that's why everybody must get engaged. Everybody must get involved. This can't be something that just Leon Charles and Spencer Thomas in Grenada speak about, or Jimmy Fletcher in St. Lucia speaks about. It has to be something that everybody speaks about. Everybody has to understand how critical this is for us. Every politician, every clergyman, every hotelier, every young person must understand the gravity of the situation and must lend their voices to it. And, you know, I just want to end with the words of Margaret Mead, which for me really give us the blueprint for this. Margaret Mead is known for saying that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. We saw it in Paris when a group of us from small island developing states came together and against all odds got the world to agree to a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal and a lot of other things like loss and damage that now people are talking about. We can do it. We just have to commit to it, and we have to recruit more people to this fight, because it really is a fight for our survival. But I am very optimistic about the future of our Caribbean, because I know we have committed people in the Caribbean. That you're doing with this program really has to be commended, because you are helping bring this to the wider Grenadian and Caribbean community, and that's so important. So thank you for this, and thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Renata. It was a pleasure having you both on the program. I've learned quite a bit, and I did not realize that True Blue was doing so much. That's all the time we have this evening, folks, in our Climate Reality. It was a pleasure. Do join us next Wednesday for episode 12 of our Climate Reality. Good night.